Somebody get me 2 AA batteries. She's going to tell me to turn it on. It's dead. You know, how many of you ever heard that, I never realized this one time, Sister Lola, I found this out. I was listening to a man and I never realized it. He actually had studied the different characteristics of, and you're not going to believe that. You ever heard the saying that men are from Mars and women are from Venus? There is a lot of differences between men and women, besides the obvious. The fact is that you know that if you have a man and a woman walk into a room and walk back out, that they both will notice totally different things. Put batteries in it, but I didn't turn it on. Is that what you're going to tell me? Is that better? Holy oh, is it on? But anyways, men and women will walk in the same room, and yet they both will notice different things. And they said that's the reason that why when you give directions, like let's say a man and a woman are in a vehicle together and they go somewhere for the first time. Or maybe they've been there 100 times, or maybe they've only been there 2 or 3 times. But what is strange to me is the men will notice you go 2 miles north, you turn and go 1 mile south, or you go 2 miles north and you go 2 miles west, then you go this, and you'll ask a woman for the same direction. You go down here, and the men will say, well, I know you go down here, 2.3 miles, and they notice things like that. But you'll ask a woman, they'll say, you turn right there at that blue green house. They notice totally, and it's like, what blue green house? I didn't even notice that. They notice you can walk, what they had done is they did studies and they had men and women walk into the same room, and when they walked out, they saw totally different things. And the reason I'm bringing this to you is because many times in the gospel, does anybody know what the gospels are? Can somebody name them to me?
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Amen. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm glad to hear somebody maybe at least looked at the Bible once or twice. It's good to hear that. But in the Bible, you would be surprised, Sister Leanne, to know this, but there are many stories that are in Matthew that are not in all the rest of them. Each one of them, one of them was a tax collector, one of them was a doctor. Each one of them saw, I guess, things different and picked up on different things. But there is one story in the Bible that are in all 4 Gospels. Very few stories in the Bible that tell about Jesus and about things He did, maybe even some of His miracles, that are actually in all 4 Gospels. If you ever look up all the miracles, you're going to find out that some of the things are not in all 4 Gospels. This one particular story that I would like to share with you this morning that the Lord put in my heart was actually in all 4 Gospels. And I'd like to start off with the first Gospel, which is Matthew. The book of Matthew, chapter 14. I tell you what, before we go another step, can we pray? Father, I just pray, God, Your will be done, Lord Jesus, in our hearts and our lives. God, I pray, Lord Jesus, so many times, Lord God, this last week was a national day of unity, or our national day of prayer, and the prayer was unity. And Lord God, I see unity needed, and God, I know, Lord Jesus, that it all comes from You. God, our lives have to circle around You. And I pray, God, this morning, Lord God, that we would all, Lord Jesus, let You into our hearts and our lives. God, I pray, Lord, that Your Word would soak in this morning, Lord God. And let us realize what You have us to need. In Your name, amen. Matthew 14, 15 through 21. I'm actually going to read each one of these stories. I know, you're thinking, they're not that long. They're actually a pretty cool story. How many of you have ever heard the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000? It's a pretty cool story. As evening approached, the disciples came to Him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. So send the crowd away, so they can go to the villages and buy themselves something to eat. Jesus replied, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. What? I'm going to jump to the end of one of these real quick and let you know why they were kind of like, It said there was 5,000 men besides women and children. Usually when a man comes, his wife comes, and then what, 2 or 3 kids? So it wouldn't be a stretch to say there was at least 15,000 there. Maybe more. It was a big crowd. And he looks at his disciples, he said, don't send them away, you feed them. Huh? We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they said. Bring them here to me, he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked to heaven. He gave thanks and broke the loaves. And he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Tomorrow they actually got full. And the disciples picked up the 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. Not only did he take those 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes and fed thousands and thousands of people, but when he got done, he still had 12 basketfuls left over. Sister, would you mind turning to the book of Mark, chapter 6, verses 35 through 44. Same story, but I think you're going to find out each time it's told, there's a couple of things that you come in. You have to almost read them all, Brother Branson, to realize what all was going on here. By this time, it was late in the day, so the disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it is very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. You know what I feel like was going on here, Brother Lynn? The disciples were probably like me. I can't eat in front of somebody. I just can't do it. I can eat in front of you if you're eating, but if I'm eating, you're not eating, I got to give you what I got. I just can't. I can't eat without. If I eat, people around me got to eat. I'm just like, I can't eat. It's just like, I just couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the Spirit of Christ. You shouldn't eat with somebody else. You know what? You shouldn't be saved and look at everybody else and say, you ought to be saved too. Amen? I don't like just being saved by myself. But he answered, you give them something to eat. You see this? Jesus said, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than a half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much bread to give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said, 5 and then 2 fishes. Then Jesus directed them to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 100 and in 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven. He gave thanks, broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten were 5,000. And also, would you look at the book of Luke, chapter 9, verses 10 through 17. When the disciples, or when the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then they took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethesda. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countrysides and find food and lodging, because we are in a remote place here. I wonder so many times, Brother Karen, when I read this so many times, I wonder how many of those disciples were worried about those people eating or if they were going. You know what? They really need to eat because my belly's growling and I'm ready to eat. He replied, you give them something to eat. It's funny to me that in all 3 of these different stories, the same story, all 3 of these just get one thing. Jesus every time said, you do it. You feed it. They answered, we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd. About 5,000 men were there. But he said to his disciples, have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. And the disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. There's some things I want you to catch in this. First thing is, it was a lot of people. It was a huge undertaking. You know, we're fixing to have Camp Blossom. I think last year, I've been trying to remember. Does anybody remember how many we had last year? I was thinking it was around 85 or 90 people we had there last year. Because we invite, our church camp entails everybody. Everybody's invited. We let the kids, the little kids, and the older ones, we come to grow closer to one another and grow closer to God. Amen. I believe we draw stronger from one another. You know, I've actually considered letting, you know, a lot of churches have youth groups. And they have youth services while the adults are having their services. And some reason those churches are struggling. And our church has been growing. And so when I think about separating our young people, Sister Tanya, from our older ones, I go back to the fact that I guess we're just going to have to figure out how to keep it going like this. Because I think these young people draw strength from me, and I know I draw strength from them. And so, I know it ain't the norm, but you know one of my biggest pet peeves with the church, any church, is when people start saying, that's not the way we've always done it. That's not the way. Everything I read in the Word of God, it never happens the way it always happened. Amen? Jesus didn't walk on planet Earth and do anything that people were expecting. Amen? But Jesus, I realized, Brother Kyle, that if you were, I mentioned Camp Blossom because I'll tell you what, it was a big deal to feed 80 or 90 people, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It has a huge galley there, and this time we're going to have to bring extra tables and set up outside, I bet. Or have them come in shifts or something because it was a big deal to feed everybody. And I'm thinking that this year we're probably going to have 150 or 200. Because I know kids are inviting kids. And I'm like, I guess they can come. I guess they can come.
Amen.
Why? Because I don't think that there's a limit to what we can do as a church. I want us to see that it was what if there was 15,000 there? And Jesus just looks at them and says, you feed them. And they go, you know what, actually in one of the texts it says it this way. It would take a half a year's wages just to give them all just a bite of food. Just to give them one bite of a pizza is going to take a half a year's wages. To feed 15, can you imagine? Hey, we're having church tonight, we're feeding 15,000. What? I'll never forget when we first started doing our pizza night. Y'all remember? Some of y'all? Pizza and puppets is what it was. We had puppets. It's been a while since we had puppets. Y'all guys, we need to have puppets. But we used to have pizza and puppets. And when we first started doing it, I'll be honest with you, Brother Justin, one of the things I do, because I'm actually a contractor, it's one of the things God, I believe, you know, matter of fact, it's scriptural. What man starts to build a house and doesn't think about the cost at the end? You can't just start it and not think about it all the way through. And when we started doing the pizza and puppets, it started getting on me. I was like, you know what, God? And I made comments in the front pulpit. I said, man, I don't know what we're going to do if it gets to be 500 kids out there or 500 people. Feeding 500 people. You know what I thought of? We'll figure it out. Peter said, they looked at him and said, Jesus, he brought them all. God, we need to send them away. They got to go somewhere else to be taken care of. And Jesus said, no, I don't want you to send them away. I want you to feed them. You do it. Isn't that what he said? You do it. I titled my message from that line. You feed them. You feed them. I know so many of us are thinking, I don't have that much. I want to tell you something. I believe that this message is meant for more than food. Sometimes when some of these kids come to church and they tell me that their parents are in jail, they're in prison. When some of them tell me that their parents are dead, some of them tell me that their parents OD. When I have adults come to me and tell me their broken lives, and how many of y'all know that, maybe some of y'all told me part of it, but I'll never know all that you went through. You'll never know all that I went through. And the fact is, I think sometimes we think, there's no way. As I look out, sister, and I look at all of them, and I go, how can we My heart is so broken for this one, and my heart is so broken for this one, and my heart. You know what the funny thing is? We think love is limited. Can I get an amen? Amen. We think love is limited. We are limited, but love is not limited. Why? God is what? Love. And God is not limited. When Jesus looked at His disciples, He wanted them to see that it is not up to you. You know what He did in every one of these texts? He looks up to heaven. He takes the little bit and He looks up to heaven and He gives thanks. And He says, now that God's involved, it's enough. Would that not freak you out? How about the little widow woman? We're talking New Testament. Let's go back. No. How about the little widow woman that every time she reached into that barrel of meal, that only had enough for her and her son to eat one more cake and then die. And every time she dips into it, this drought went on for years. Every time she dipped in there, I thought I got the last of it yesterday. But here's enough again for us to eat again. I thought I got the last this morning for breakfast. But here it is for lunch. Here it is for dinner. Every time she went to the little bit of oil that she had to mix with it, you know, the flour by itself would become. Every time she went to the oil, there it was. Can I let you know what the oil was? How many likes butter? I got one granddaughter right now that she'll eat butter if you let her. Miss Oakland, I think, was doing it the other day, wasn't she? She just licks it off. Oh, that real butter. Well, you get some good olive oil, and it's as good as any butter you'll ever eat. And every time she dipped in there it was. Jesus said, you feed them. If they are broken, you give them some of your heart. If their spirit is crushed, you hold them up. If their life is broken, you help mend their life. But it'll take time, and I only have so much. I can stop the sun. I can stop the earth from rotating. I can put the universe in complete stop if I have to. You've got enough time. Come on. God's telling us it is our responsibility to feed them. Every one of these texts, Jesus looked at them and said, I don't care what's in the bank account. What did He say in this one? He said, if you'll read back to the front of this one, He actually says, what do you got? Well, we got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. No, I left one out for you. I did it on purpose. I would like to read the book of John's version of this. The book of John, chapter 6, verses 3 through 9. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside. You young people, you need to hear this one. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with His disciples. You people that are new in the Lord, or maybe you knew the Lord before and you broke it. You broke some promises. You got away and you're back. Maybe some of you know that maybe your life hasn't been all it should be. Maybe you're here. Maybe some of you, this is the first time you've been in a while. Maybe you come all the time. But I want you to hear something. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards Him, He said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test Him. You know, Jesus was constantly testing Him. Oh, ye of little faith. He asked this only to test Him. For He had already made up His mind what He was going to do. Woo! Can I tell you something this morning? God's mind's already made up about what He's going to do. He's going to have a church. He's going to have people that will follow Him. He's going to have love in this world. And He's going to show love like it's never been seen. I think that's what's going on in the world today. I think those people and those churches and those places that have sat there and said we love and then exclude. You know what I'm saying? Those people in the church that said that they serve Christ and that they're Christian, and yet they exclude and they judge and they don't forgive. God says, listen, that stuff's going to be done away with. I know what I'm going to do. I've got my mind made up what this church is going to be and what it's going to be like. And if this church has got to break and this church has got to break, I'm going to have a church somewhere. If I got to put it on the side of a hill somewhere, we're going to have a church. And we're going to, you know, I've actually heard about a few places that are actually having churches in their home again. Why? Because they're tired of church the same as always. Philip looked inside himself. The disciples looked inside themselves and said, listen, I can't handle it. There's no way we can feed 5,000. There's no way we can feed 15,000. Tell you the truth, Lord, I don't see how we can feed 100 on what we got in the treasury right now. We got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. No, you don't. You don't have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Philip answered him, it would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have it by. Another of his disciples, Andrew and Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy. Did you catch this? None of the other ones said it. None of the other ones said it. He wasn't their bread. He wasn't their fish. It was a little boy's. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fishes. Brother Malachi has just a little bit of a peanut butter jelly sandwich left. He has a little can of tuna. What are we going to do with that, Lord? Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But how far will they go among so many? The truth is, the disciples didn't give them what they had. So many of us think, Brother Lynn, it wasn't the Pharisees? Huh? It wasn't the governor of the land? You know, if you're going to feed 5,000, you're going to have a lot of money. We're probably going to have to go talk to the king. He's the only one to feed 15,000 people. It's the only way to get it happening. They didn't call up Bill Gates and say, hey, brother, Bill, you write checks everywhere. Would you mind writing one to the church? Because we got to feed 15,000 people. Hello, Bill. Hi, how's my phone? It wasn't Bill. Can I tell you something, Brother Logan? It wasn't a pastor. Did you hear me? It wasn't a pastor. It wasn't the disciples. It was a little boy. They said, listen, I believe in this Jesus. That was his dinner, I'm sure. That was his dinner. Do you know what I see in this? I see the heart of Christ in this young boy. Why do I think the youth of this church are so important? Because I want them to grow up to be those kind of people to say, you know what, it don't matter what I got. What I got is God's, and He can have it all.